Okay, so I hope this screen is visible to all of you.
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay, so
Yes, sir.
this,
Yes, sir. It's
okay, thank you. So this is the syllabus that you are going to follow in this course. Uh, Firstly, let me tell you what is a computer programming, what you are going to learn in this course, and then you will understand why these prerequisites have been written. Right. First of all, let me add a brief page here that what we are going to learn. Okay. Firstly, let me tell you that computer programming is solving problems with computer. In fact, this is the general term that I can tell you, but there it has much deeper meaning. I am coming to that point. So firstly, what we are going to learn is solving problems using computer. Okay, now this term solving problems using computer, first of all let me tell you, you cannot solve all problems using computer. So only those problems that can be solved using logic and computation. As an example, suppose if I give you a number and I ask you, is this number a prime number? The fact is, you can, even on your pen and paper, you can simply do a calculation and then tell, and then give the answer. Yes, this is a prime number or this is not a prime number. Such kind of problem. So to solve that problem, what you did, you employed some logic, right? And that logic is maybe by dividing all the numbers up to root n, or maybe uh, you have a list of all the prime numbers below root n. As for example, if I give you a number, say 109, okay, and what you will do is that in this scenario, that you will divide, say, is it prime? If such question is asked, what will you do is that divide by all primes below root of 100n, root of 109, which in fact turns out to be 10 point something. So, and if any of this prime successfully divides 109, that means 109 is composite, otherwise it is prime. So this is the logic. So you think about the logic, what you are going to do, and then you are going to perform the computation. That means first you will determine the primes below 109, maybe 2, 3, 5, 7, all the primes below 10, and then you will divide 109 by these numbers one by one. That is your computation. So these kinds of problem that involve that logic and computation, these kinds of problems are called, such problems are called computational problems. And In short, computational problems are those problems that can be solved using. Some of you is unmuted. Mute yourself if you have nothing to ask at this point. So such problems are called the computational problems. So computational problems are those problems that can be solved using logic and computation. You first think about the logic, how you are going to solve it, and then you will perform the corresponding computation. Okay. Have you studied a bit about graph theory, or have you any idea about minimum of how a graph looks like of graph theory, not Cartesian graph?
Yes,
Huh?
sir.
You are not quite audible. Yes.
Yes, sir, but not everyone, I think.
Okay. Okay. So I'll just give another brief example. Suppose I've been given a graph, maybe a graph like this. For those who have not studied graph theory, don't worry. This is not required for exam or something like that. I'm just giving another example of computational problem, nothing more than that. So suppose this is a possible graph. Now, if I ask you, is there any path from this node to this node? The answer is obviously you can look at it and you can tell me yes, it has a path, right? In fact, it has multitudes of paths. One possible path is this. One possible path is this, and then going via. That means it has multitudes of paths, as you can see. And among them, the smallest path is this one. Now you can answer it because this is a small graph, right? What if I give you a huge graph? You cannot answer it then. So you have to think a logic. What logic am I going to apply? See, here what you used is simply an intuition that yes, these are the paths from this node to this node. You did not apply any logic per se, though inherently our brain applied the same logic, which we didn't understand, which we didn't in fact cautiously thought. But if you are given a large graph, obviously you cannot answer there only by just by looking at the graph. In that scenario, you have to think a logic. What logic can I apply to go from one node to another node? Then you have to perform the corresponding computation following that particular logic. Okay, so this is another computational problem. Though obviously this computational problem will not be studied in this course. So these are the examples of computational problem. Now you may think that today's modern days computer system can solve multitudes of problems. Starting from even machine can learn itself. That's called machine learning. So all of them are computational problem. The fact is, the machine is given a bunch of data, and again, yes, a particular logic is given to it, such that the machine can predict. Again, following certain computation, following certain calculations. Right. So all those problems that involve some logical thoughts, some computation, some calculation, only those problems can be solved using computer. And if we can think properly, most of the problems in our real world can be have either a corresponding computational problem counterpart, or it can be or it itself is a computational problem, or at least it can be converted into a computational problem counterpart. And whenever you will be able to solve, whenever you will obtain a particular problem, or a problem that can be converted or given some terminologies so that it can be described using logics and computations, you can solve that using computer. Obviously, you can solve that using pen and paper as well, by thinking the logic and performing the computation step by step. But once the problem size becomes huge, you cannot do that on pen and paper. Those who have not understood the concept of graph, but want to understand that what did I mean by problem size, as for example 109, if I tell you is it prime, you will simply just divide by these four numbers, and yes, you can easily on your pen and paper within 2 minutes you can tell me that it is prime or not. But what if I give a huge number, something, I'm just writing this number randomly, I don't know whether it is prime or composite. Can you answer it by just using pen and paper? No. At least you can, but it will take huge amount of time. Though there are some shortcuts for divisible by 3 or 7 or 11, I have just written it randomly, considering that this is prime. Obviously, using pen and paper you cannot check it, at least within reasonable amount of time. In those scenarios, you have to employ some logic. This same logic will work, but computer will do much more faster than you or any human living. So these are the problems that we solve using computer, and this does not limit it. Rather, as I have said, most of the problem you see around ourselves can be converted into an equivalent computational problem, and once it can be converted, that can be solved using computer. So eventually, so what are you going to learn here? So how to solve a computational problem. And this involves two steps. First, thinking the logic. We have to think the logic out, that how are we going to solve that particular problem. This logic has a beautiful name in computer science, that is called algorithm. Okay. Now, once you have obtained the algorithm has much more properties than a simple logic. But I'm not going to those points. Maybe later on I'll go what specifically makes an algorithm. So just focus on this part. First, once you have been given a particular problem, you have to think the logic out. That this is the logic that I'm going to employ to solve this particular problem, and then implement the logic using some programming language. Okay. Now, this part needs some discussion. What is that? First of all, what did I mean by programming language? See, when we want to express some thought or something, we employ some language, spoken language. Maybe it's Hindi, maybe it's English, right? Or maybe any language, including all those languages that I have not named. So, to express anything, you have to employ some particular language. And similarly, to express the logic that you have just thought out, to express it to the computer, you have to express that logic in computer's own language. Otherwise, computer will not understand it. Let me tell you one thing, that computer is nothing but a programmable electronic device, and it is nothing more than that. and it itself understands nothing. Okay, though in today's world we see robots and machine learning, various machine learning devices working here and there, but they are also working based upon some logic designed by some algorithmists and programmers. Otherwise, at the underlying, the machine itself understands nothing. It cannot think itself. Whatever you are saying, a computer is doing, that's because the programming logic has been written in that manner. Okay, so this is an important point. Computer is a programmable electronic device that itself understands nothing. But as I've said, this is programmable. And what does it mean by programmable? That means whatever logic you will give to this, right? Whatever logic you will provide in its own language, it will do that blindly. You just have to provide the logic. Okay, and this is where the computer's own language comes in. The fact is, computer is an electronic device, as I've said. So it understands only electronic switches on and off, nothing more than that. So computer's own language, computer's own language is nothing but on, that will represent as 1, and off, that will represent as 0. So computer understands nothing other than these two symbols, 0 and 1. So what are we going to provide? So do we have to write those logics in terms of zeros and ones? The answer is no. The fact is, the oldest programmers, maybe around when the first computer came around 40s or 50s. Okay, I have forgotten the exact year. After that, those first generation programmers, they really wrote logics in terms of zeros and ones. By punching, there used to be a device called punching cards that used to provide us inputs. If at particular location some hole has been punched, that means that is a 1, otherwise it's a 0. So, and the programmers used to punches at the locations of 1s and used to provide that. So eventually the computer would get the language of zeros and ones. But obviously that was not an easy task. Later on, step by step, various softwares have been designed. I will go through all these discussions in details, and now programmer's job is not that does not face that level of difficulty that used to be in 40s or 50s, because today's programming languages, the high level programming languages, they are English like language. right? You can simply provide the logic in a particular English like programming language. You do not need to write in terms of zeros and ones anymore. Okay, so the programming has come a long way to achieve this. I will demonstrate this complete history, but not today. Let me first focus on what we are going to learn again. So the programming language, by here I mean here, yes, obviously if you wish you can still write in terms of zeros and ones, but you have to obviously need to have a particular editor that will understand that language. But the programming language today, as software developers, the software developers use are high level programming languages. High level programming languages. That started with C, such as C, though it does not hurt to know of a few more names. I think many of you already knows them. Many of you already know these or have heard about these languages or have even studied these languages. So today's all the programmings, all the software developments, they are being done in these high level programming languages. And a set of system software, right? A set of system software. I am focusing on C in this course, so I'll use the term compiler. Though Java also has a compiler as well, Python is fully interpreted, but I'm not going into that details. That will perplex many of you. So C is a set of system software. So from now on, every discussion that I'm going to do, that I'm going to make, is specifically for the C programming language. Okay, and no other languages. A set of system software not only a single system software, remember this. In fact, let me name them as macroprocessor, though even in fact today's compilers include all these steps, but theoretically these steps are different. Macroprocessor, compiler, assembler. In fact, what each of them do, I'll demonstrate. Don't worry. For now, just look at these names. You do not even need to remember this. I'm just saying this for the sake of discussion. Eventually, I'll demonstrate each and every of these steps. Right. What each and every this macroprocessor, compiler, assembler, linker, and loader are doing together. Okay. So don't worry about these names now. I'll discuss everything in details. A set of system software converts a program written in C to sequence of zeros and ones. That eventually a computer understands. So in short, the reason behind this discussion is that obviously look into these zeros and ones and how everything is happening within a computer. But when we write a program, we will focus on a high level programming language. There is nothing to worry about that we'll have to write programs in languages of zeros and ones. No, we'll write English-like programming language whose keywords have been taken purely from English dictionaries. Just we have to think the logic and convert that logic into this C programming language. And that's what we're going to study in this course. First, how to think a logic given a computational problem. How will you think the logic? And once the logic has been thought, eventually how to express that logic into the C programming language. Okay, and obviously the C programming language itself in details. That will be our overall study in this course. Okay, so obviously what you need to know is that mathematics is obviously necessary, because until unless you think in the mathematical way, see when you solve some particular mathematical problem, what do? You first think out the logic, that this is the way that you are going to solve that particular problem, and then you take a pen and paper and you implement those logics step by step. This is exactly the same in this scenario as well. You have to think the logic, and this time rather than converting into the language of mathematics, maybe the language of integration or differential equations or something else, you have to convert them into the language of the C programming language. Okay, so and obviously logic building skill. You have to know how to think logic. Though I will guide throughout this course how to, given a particular computational problem, will think the logic out, but that's not easy always. Then introduction to computer, I will discuss this. This will be a part of this course, how eventually a overall computer works. And obviously this is the most important, because if I consider like this, if I just tell you the formulas for the integration and so on, but you do not practice yourself, will you be able to solve a complex integration? Not complex number integration, I'm saying. That means an integration which needs several steps of maybe substitution or maybe by parts or everything together. That means a sufficiently complex integration. Will you be able to solve it without practice? The answer is no. I think no. Maybe some of you can, but I think no. Similarly, you have to practice a lot to learn programming appropriately. I'll give you a plethora of computational problems. Don't worry about that. You just have to think them with all you have. You have to think the logic. I'll show you how to convert that logic. Obviously, I'll guide in thinking the logic as well. Then I'll show you how to convert that logic into the programming language. But eventually, it is you who will have to practice it a sufficient amount of time to get the programming language in grip. This is not only for C. Even now, when we learn any new programming language, we need to practice a lot. Otherwise, that programming language, just by reading a book, it is not possible to learn a programming language. Okay, so you need to have an enthusiasm yourself. Okay, and what we're going to learn here, Linux commands. Eventually, we'll use the Linux operating system throughout this course. In fact, I'm running this complete thing on a Linux system as well. This is my daily driver. But if some of you are using Windows, maybe you can you'll be guided in the lab how to install a Linux system, and all your Linux commands that will be guided in the lab. What editors are available? Files and directories, that means inside the operating system, how the operating system eventually works, what you are going to create when you create a C file, and so on. Eventually, how everything inside the computer works. Okay, and what is happening and what is happening when you write a particular program. Not only a particular program, what is happening when you execute some software on your machine, what is happening inside. Okay, that will be discussed as the introduction in details. So then, as I've said, the design of algorithms, how to write an algorithm. Eventually, what is the difference between, as I've said, given a computational problem, what makes a proper algorithm, and number system. This is important. In fact, each of them are important. I focused on number system because our natural thoughts are in decimal, right? Our natural thoughts are always in decimal. If I give you a number, our brain will always try to read it in decimal. But computer does not know decimal. Computer knows only two digits, 0 and 1. Okay, decimal has 10 digits from 0 all the way up to 9. But computer understands only two digits, that is called binary number system. I'll discuss this in details. So to understand computer's language, you have to understand the binary number system as well. So that will be discussed. Then how to write a simple program, how a C program is written, how it is executed, how it is compiled, and how it is executed in each and everything. Variables, eventually variables are something like eventually need some storage for every calculation you are going to do. As for example, if I tell you something like user will provide some input, say n, some number, you have to tell whether that number is prime or not. Again, that old example I am picking up. Now, to keep that number in, and in fact, for several calculations, internal calculations, several temporary storage that is required, where you are going to keep the results of your temporary calculation, intermediate calculations, and variables are the way to declare those storages. Okay, so how to declare a variable? Maybe some of you have not understood what I just said, so don't worry, I am going to go into the much depth of each and every of this topic. So how to declare a variable, how eventually this program flow and control, because eventually just by writing a sequence of logics does not implement some complex thoughts. For that you need to have a condition. That means if this is true, then only do that, otherwise do this. That kinds of logics can also be implemented. Okay, and standard terminal I/O functions. Eventually every program, every software that you see, if it takes no input from user and it shows nothing to user, it is of no use, right? Maybe you have written a program that does something, but user has no idea what it is doing. So what is the use of that? So it has to interact with the user, right? At least it has to show some output to the user. Yes, this is the output of this is the result of the calculations I have just performed. At least you have to show that to the user, right? And how will you show that? Obviously on the screen. How will you communicate with the screen in your program? So this is the output. Input, I for input, O for output. Input output functions. How to communicate with the various input output devices. How will you take the input from user? How will you show the output to the users? Okay. Then various data types and storages, operators and expressions. You will know about them if I demonstrate data types and storage classes. Maybe some of you will not understand at this moment, because for that you have to understand the size of a particular storage. Okay. Now, operators and expressions. If you take any expression that involves operators and operands, let me write it here. Suppose if I write something like, say, 2 plus 3 into 7, right? In fact, the way we calculate, the computer also calculate it, and it will give the correct output of 35. But here the concept is that these 2, 3 and 7, they are operands. This plus and multiplication, they are operators, right? So, and when we write an expression, we write it using appropriate operands and the operators operating on those operands. As for example, here plus operator is operating on the operands 2 and 3. The result is being calculated. Then the multiplication operator is working on the result of this expression and operand 7. I will go into these details, don't worry. So operators, operands and expressions are extremely important to write a proper calculations that you want to make via the programming. And these arithmetic operators are not the only operators available in a programming languages. Available in today's programming languages, there are multitudes of operators, and you have to use them properly to get a successful computation. So this will be discussed here. Conditional program, then execution loops and iteration. You'll understand them in time. Abstractions and functions. In fact, these terminologies, maybe some of you are not understanding what these terminologies mean, because to understand these terminologies you have to understand at least the basic of a programming language. So just look at these terms throughout this course. These terminologies and their details will be discussed in great depth. Be assured about that. Arrays, pointers and structures, each and everything, they are again some new terminologies for some of you, or some of you have already understood, and maybe those who have exposed to some programming language before. And here file handling basic, how to handle files using C. This part, well, to understand this part, the object oriented programming concepts, classes and objects, we have to look into another programming language, C++. Some of you is unmuted, mute yourself. We'll have to look into another programming language, C++, which has been built upon C as an extension of C with object-oriented features added to it. This will not be much. Because this will take us outside of the C programming language, and truth to be told, with only just these few discussions, it is quite difficult to feel the object-oriented methodology, because the object-oriented methodology is years of practice to break some problem in object-oriented methodology. So my major discussion will be up to file handling basics. That means pure C, right? If time permits, maybe obviously I'll give you some idea about what the object-oriented methodology turns out. Okay, so do you have any query till now? Any of you have any query regarding what I've discussed till now? Okay, so what we are going to learn in this course, it is clear to all of you, right? Now about the books. What books we are going to follow in this course? We will majorly follow this book. Okay, we'll majorly follow this book because I'm assuming that many of you have not exposed to any programming language before. This is an ultimate beginner's book. This is everything has been discussed in such details in this book that every concept has been discussed in much details in this book, and it is easy to read, easy to follow. And if you already have some exposure to some programming language, you can go to this Herbert Shields book, Complete Reference in C, which is a bit intermediate book, uh, but if you are going to read it for the first time, you may face a bit difficulty, not much, but you may face a bit difficulty. But this book is something special. This book has been written, the C programming language. This is an extremely thin book with green color cover. This book has been written by the creator of the C programming himself. And this is the ultimate reference of the C programming. Ultimate reference of C program. And this is really advanced book. So if some of you has good exposure and if some of you are already highly experienced in writing C programs, it is suggested that at least and if you love programming, at least once this book must be read. Okay. Even in the future, some of you gets huge passion in programming, you should read this book. This is an extremely thin book, but each and every paragraph of this book, in fact all the later C books you'll see has been written quite from this book. All of them have followed this book, just in easier language. Maybe each and every paragraph of this book has become a section in another book. Okay, so this book will not spoon feed the concept. It is straightforward, a complete reference of the language. That's it. So we will follow mostly this let us say book. Okay. Any of you have any query regarding the syllabus or books? Any query? Okay, then let me give a brief about introduction. About how a computer works. Just briefly, just an introduction to the computer. As you can see, the fact is, the computer internally, I think many of you have heard these terminologies: hard disk, which will refer as HDD, RAM, which in fact RAM is the more common terminology, which in fact turns out to be random access memory. And the brain of the computer, the processor, right? It also has a name, that is Central Processing Unit, or CPU. Though in basic terminologies, many tell the complete cabinet of a desktop computer as the CPU, but that is the cabinet. The CPU is in fact this is the processor part. That resides on another chip that I think you know already, that is called motherboard. In fact, motherboard is just a communicator of all the of all the various chips, integrated circuits of the computer that is being used by the computer to perform all the computations. Okay, so our major focus will be on hard disk, RAM and processor, at least in this basic discussion. And as I've said, the first few statements that I'll tell are extremely basic discussion of how a computer works, right? And each of them can be studied in great depth, and in fact later on when we'll have some more things in our hand, like binary number system and so on, we'll be able to go into the details of them. So initially, firstly, suppose this is my hard disk, okay, and suppose somewhere this RAM is kept here, and maybe the processor. Okay, now hard disk is a permanent storage. Hard disk is a permanent storage. That means all your files, programs, even your operating system, that means your Windows or Linux or Mac, whatever you are using, they reside on the hard disk. Everything. When your everything resides on hard disk. This is a permanent storage. That means its contents remains even after power goes off. I think you have also observed that when you shut down a computer, eventually your hard disk have all the information retained until unless you yourself removes that, or your hard disk crashes. Otherwise, the contents of the hard disk remains as it is. Okay, such kinds of storage is called non-volatile storage. Okay, RAM, why it is called random access? To understand that, you have to understand the concept of address, but I'm not going into the details. As I've said, I'm just telling you the highest overview of this overall how computer works. We will go into the depth step by step, but at this moment what you're seeing, I think, is known to the majority of you, just how a computer works, how these three parts work together, nothing more than that. So RAM is volatile storage. Okay, you can consider RAM like a bookshelf. Each row contains some information. Okay, but RAM is volatile storage. That means when computer turns on, or when computer at the beginning of just the computer turns on, the RAM is empty. Okay, and when a computer is turned off, it becomes empty again. Now what RAM does is that during execution of a program or application, right? Eventually every application is some program. During execution of some program, initially it is in hard disk, and when you execute the program, it comes to RAM. As for example, suppose this terminal. Okay, I do not have any terminal opened. The complete program in the terms of zeros and ones for the terminal is at this moment in the hard disk. Maybe suppose at this position of the hard disk that the complete terminal program is residing. Okay, I've just written as an example. Now in the RAM, as there is no terminal running, in the RAM there is no trace of terminal. No trace of the terminal program is in the RAM at this moment. Now as soon as I click on this, a terminal opens. What happens is that it came from hard disk to the RAM. Okay, and then it starts executing. Okay, so while executing, the program comes from hard disk to RAM, and processor, that is the brain of the computer, executes the program from RAM. Now that means the program has come here. The program has come here. In fact, maybe suppose it is lying in this 4 rows. Obviously, it does not take 4 rows or something like that. It takes thousands or even millions of such rows. What each of these row contains, what comes from here in the name of program. To understand those things, you have to understand the language, how computer stores information. Computer stores information, as I've said, in terms of zeros and ones. So you have to understand that first. Okay. After that, I'll tell you what in fact comes here. So suppose the program, maybe that terminal here, have come here in this part of the RAM. What CPU will do is that, or the processor will do is that, it will take from the RAM the content of each row. It has a name that is called instruction. Let me write this out. Every program is in fact a sequence of instructions. Now, what this instruction mean? Again, I've just given another terminology. What this instruction mean? I'll demonstrate that later. But focus on this thing now. Maybe consider eventually every instruction is a sequence of again a sequence of zeros and ones. Maybe at this row the instruction has come here, maybe 00101101. Maybe this gives some instruction to the CPU. Okay, it has come from the program. What CPU will do, similarly, this has some particular instruction, this is some particular instruction, it is some data as well, right? I'm not going into the details. Now what CPU will do is that it will take these instructions one by one, understand what is meant by that instruction, and will do the job accordingly. And eventually the CPU takes that instruction. Okay, so CPU or processor reads the instruction. Okay, it is 256 already. This is the last line. I'll just write. Read the instruction, understands what it means, and does the job accordingly. In fact, what instruction is, what processor in fact reads, each and everything, then I'll discuss in the next class. In fact, if some of you have not understood this part, don't worry. I will discuss this in great details. Okay. Any of you have any confusion or any question regarding this discussion? Any confusion or any question? Okay, so हाँ दिव्यांश बोलो. Unmute yourself.
Sir, yes, sir.
हाँ.
Sir, I wanted to ask, like, our program is already in the hard disk, so why not the CPU directly takes the instruction from the hard disk and execute the program?
Okay.
Why the
Hard,
RAM?
yes. Hard disk internally uh, is very slow. Accessing hard disk is very slow because hard disk is not semiconductor device. Semiconductor, if I'm not going into the details here, hard disk is magnetic. The hard disk, you see, though today's storage disks that are coming like solid state disk SSD, they are sufficiently fast, but still not fast enough because see, CPU is extremely fast. CPU can execute millions of instructions per second, but hard disk cannot provide that many instructions at that speed. Okay, and what happens is that CPU will sit most of the time idle. So that's why that complete program, in fact complete program is not read. I'll discuss that in details later. For now, let's consider that that complete program comes to the RAM. RAM is sufficiently fast, but still no, it is not sufficient for the CPU as well. Every RAM has also has some particular speed that is represented in megahertz. So 3000 megahertz or 2100 megahertz. I'll discuss these things, what this means. But RAM is much faster than hard disk. That means the rate at which CPU demands the instructions, RAM at least can provide, not at that level, but at least much faster than hard disk. In short, if you'd see your programs running from the hard disk directly, you see your computer lagging continuously. Is it clear what I said?
Yes, sir.
Just for matching the speed. Okay. Does it answer your
Yes,
question?
sir.
Okay.
Yes.
Any other query? Any other query? Okay, so I think it's 3 now, and I think you'll also have to go to the next class. So I'll stop my discussion here and stopping the sharing. We'll see you tomorrow. And
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Sorry for the interruption. In fact, my network went off suddenly. Okay, we'll see you tomorrow at 2 to 3.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome.